One of WOLA's longest-standing programs is on drug policy. And drug policy is often considered a third rail issue. It's one of those, nobody wants to touch it, it's incredibly controversial. But what we've found is that it's also incredibly important, and drug policy can be very destructive as well.
Here are Dr. David Murray, Chief Scientist for the White House Drug Control Policy Office. And joining me on my left is John Walsh, who's the Washington Drugs Policy Senior Associate with the Washington Office on Latin America. Good morning to both of you. Thank you for being here. This is the budget for 2009, the federal drug control spending.
Well, that's as the budget is presented by ONDCP, and I have serious issues with the way ONDCP presents their budget these days. It began several years ago with this administration, but a huge chunk of domestic law enforcement money doesn't show up in that presentation.
Some of the work I'm most proud of that WOLA has done in recent years and that we're seeing the fruit of right now is in Guatemala. And what's happened now, after many years of advocacy, close mechanisms of advocacy that were done very closely between our colleagues in Central America and in Guatemala in particular, and the U.S. and colleagues in Europe who were pushing for this as well, has been the establishment of something called the CCAC, the International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala.
Bueno, es por la gran impunidad que existe en Guatemala, que primero empieza con una impunidad en violaciones a los derechos humanos, y por eso es que el inicio de CCAC realmente es CCAC, que era Comisión Internacional contra los Cuerpos Ilegales y Aparatos Clandestinos en Guatemala, que es como aparece en el Acuerdo Global de Derechos Humanos. Esa impunidad que empezó con las violaciones a los derechos humanos se ha ido extendiendo, ya no solamente a las violaciones a los derechos humanos, sino que a otras áreas de la impunidad, como es corrupción, crimen organizado y cualquier delito común de la calle, de tal manera que ahorita la peor violación de los derechos humanos es que el Estado de Guatemala se ha visto incapaz de proteger a sus ciudadanos de los derechos fundamentales.
Another issue that has been thrust onto WOLA's agenda by the Congress has been what's called the Merida Initiative. And the Merida Initiative is a big counter-drug aid package that's being provided to Mexico and Central America.
Our counterparts in Mexico and in Central America had been saying to us that they think citizen security and police reform are really important issues, and that to the extent they understood the Merida Initiative, they had concerns about how the police reform pieces of it were addressed in Merida. They were concerned it was too focused on specialized anti-drug units and specialized anti-gang units, and not focused enough on kind of across-the-board comprehensive reform of the police. So for us, bringing this group together from all of Mesoamerica to make exactly the same kind of pitch about how this issue needed to be addressed was really an important message. We want to educate members of Congress and their staff about the issues that we work on, about human rights concerns in the region, and about how human rights and U.S. policy intersect each other. And the way you do that is you do something on the Hill on a topic that we think is important and that may draw and interest members and staff and NGOs that are interested, and you make the presentation. We get to clearly and simply and succinctly put forward our message, and not just the message, but put a human face on that message to congressional staff and members if they come. And the flip side of that, we get to interact directly with the interested members of Congress and the interested staff members, and we get to develop or build on relationships we have, because I think if you're trying to influence people's thinking, you're not doing it by just doing one single presentation or sending one paper. You're building it over a period of time and coming to events and interacting on the side of events and talking after events is a big part of that. So having people there is part of developing and maintaining an ongoing relationship.
I want to talk briefly, I submitted written testimony, I want to talk briefly about the kinds of violence and crime that Central America confronts.
Sometimes I get asked, what can WOLA do? You're here in a sea of foreign policy advisors and experts. You're not the people who can actually make change happen. So what can you do? And I think that what we can do is help create an environment in which change is possible. We can instigate debates. We can push issues, put them before people in ways that they can't ignore and that they have to deal with. And in that way, we can help create the environment in which policymakers and those who can change things can be brave enough to take that step and create public policies that have greater respect for human rights.